Hello, BookTube, and welcome back to Epic Comic Book Wednesday, the world's finest collaboration between myself and Michael K. Vaughan, where we combine the forces of stately Vaughan Manor and Hyde Cottage to talk about the comic books on which we've wasted our youths. And today's topic comes from Michael K. Vaughan, as of course they all do, because I horned my way in on one of the infinite number of regular features on his channel, and as a result, he gets to pick what we talk about. And our topic today ought to be one of complete, joyous unanimity. And instead, I haven't watched Mike's video, but I have a feeling that it's going to be a case of complete, miserable unanimity. Because the unanimity comes from the fact that our subject today is Superman. Michael K. Vaughan is a huge Superman fan, and so am I. And that's the unanimity part, is that we're talking about Superman today. Unfortunately, today we're talking about what again, I'm not 100% sure what Michael K. Vaughan will say, but I think it's without doubt that this is the worst iteration of Superman that has ever happened. It's this guy. It's the New 52 Superman, which will require a bit of context for those of you who are not involved in comics. Of course, if you're not involved in comics, you won't be watching these videos. Even if you are involved in comics, you won't be watching these videos, but still. I've mentioned many times before on this channel that Marvel and DC, the two superhero comic book companies, have a penchant for massive events. Events generate sales, they pull people in, they get talked about. And the most tempting thing to do for an event is to fiddle with your own continuity. DC has a much, much more pronounced track record doing this than Marvel does, because they made the mother of all events. Once upon a time, 40 years ago, they did something called Crisis on Infinite Earths, which was a 12-issue series of comics whose only purpose was to completely revamp the continuity of all the comics that had gone for the 50 years before. The thinking on the part of the writers and the editors that come up with these ideas is that will somehow make things easier for the readers. And I would say that proves beyond a shadow of a doubt that they've never met a comic book geek, but they were all comic book geeks when they were kids. So why they think that, I have no idea. To put it mildly, there is no evidence that comic book geeks care about that kind of thing. In fact, just the opposite. They like the complexity. They like learning the lore. But nope, every once in a while, DC Comics especially, let's concentrate on them, will come up with a new event to revamp continuity. I keep waiting, as I said last week, I keep waiting for them to announce to the 15 comic book fans that they haven't driven away, announce that a big, gigantic, absolutely positively Final Crisis type thing is in the offing, that it'll be running all summer. Maybe suspend the sales of all other DC comics except that one thing for the whole of the summer. Have it come out every 2 weeks, all summer long. It's not like they're making any money from the weekly sales of anything else anyway. Suspend all of those comics on the idea that everything is suspended, and when this event resumes, well, it'll resume on its own terms. It will set the terms of what's coming in the future. And then have that event erase the effects of all other events. Have that event do that. Have it erase the events of all other events so that you set comic books back either just across the board to 1980 or across the board to 1980 with a handful of exceptions of later lore that you want to include. Because some developments in comic book continuity since 1980 have been very good. Fans have embraced them. I know that DC Comics will never do that, so this is all going to continue to be a mess, but their most noteworthy recent example of jiggering with their continuity was something called the New 52. They were going to come out with 52 titles. Totally revamping the origins and backstory of all of their characters, putting forward a whole new roster of first issues, some of which would be very familiar to readers, others of which were characters who have either never had a first issue or haven't had one in decades, in a conscious attempt to shape the landscape of their lineup. And fans had no choice, of course. If you've been buying Superman or the Justice League or Wonder Woman or Batman for the whole of your life, you have no choice but to see what's going on there. It's not like you're going to stop doing that, although we now know that what the alt-right Comicsgate guys were saying 10 years ago, that it only takes 2 or 3 weeks to kill a habit, is actually true. 10 years ago, you would have said, well, it's not like I'm going to stop reading Superman, but yeah, it is that. It's exactly that. If it gets really horrible, you will stop reading it. You'll just find something else to fill your time. I did. I think a lot of other people did too. And I think the New 52 drove away far, far, far more readers than it attracted, even if the sales figures might say different. I don't actually know what the final word sales figures were on the whole New 52 revamp. The point that I want to make, since fans paid attention to the New 52 relaunches, all the number ones that were coming out, since fans paid attention to that, naturally there were some of those fans who simply couldn't let go of the sunk cost fallacy, and so intermittently praised some New 52 re-envisionings of characters. And the point that I want to make in response to that is that all of that was just cope. All of the New 52 was terrible. All of it was. All of it. Every character who was reimagined in any way, large or small, was made worse. All the concepts that were reimagined were made worse. In very quantifiable ways, not just me saying, oh, I prefer the old way. In very quantifiable ways they were. Now, of course, the character who suffered the most along those lines is the character in the DC lineup who suffers the most from any revamp, and that's Wonder Woman. Probably because of the ingrained sexism that was so much a part of the industry for so long. DC has a trinity of great characters, Superman, Batman, and Wonder Woman. Wonder Woman always gets the short end of the stick when something like this happened, and it was definitely true with the New 52. She went from being in the era of the much hated, but still, Gail Simone gave us a Wonder Woman who was regal, who was the sum of her creative parts, the sum of all of her different iterations, who was an intellectual, an ambassador, but also a powerhouse, equal to Superman in every way. In other words, a very good, modern honoring of the character herself. The character herself is like that. And overnight, because of the New 52, we went from that character to what Wonder Woman became in the New 52, which was Conan the Barbarian in a brassiere. It was, what ho, fellow warriors, fine day for battle by Crom. I don't think she said by Crom, but she might as well have. She became a lug, an idiot, a warrior woman who was only, I think I live only for battle. It's a fine day for battle. It was painful to see. Of course, as I mentioned before, DC and Marvel have live wire characters that your weird slacktivist new creative team is absolutely not allowed to rearrange fundamentals on the money-making characters. You absolutely cannot rearrange the fundamentals on Spider-Man, and you can't do it on Batman either. But the New 52 Batman wasted no time whatsoever. I think it was 10 panels before it made sure not only to tell us that Batman is sexually active and likes to Roger Catwoman while they're both in costume, but also to show us that. A nice, big, gigantic, full-page spread to show us that. Lovely. Just what I want when I open the first issue of Batman or Detective Comics. Full-blown pornography. That's just what I want. Yep, that's great. And so on and so forth all the way down the line. You have a Justice League who all hate each other. You have all of these different marquee characters who either aren't there at all anymore or who are absolute dark house perversions of what they used to be. The ones that weren't there anymore at all, of course, bothered me. For instance, the Justice Society of America seemed to be gone. It seemed that there had never been an older superhero team in the DC world. And if the past bothered me, well, the future bothered me even more because there was no hint of the Legion. There was no hint of the Legion of Superheroes 1,000 years in the future. Instead, there was just this soulless lineup of absolute self-absorbed, smirking jerks. Just a league of nihilists, a league of navel-gazing nihilists. And probably the worst of them all was the New 52 Superman. Probably he was the worst example of them all. Certainly one of the most bitter examples, because the slow evolution of the normal Superman, what even at the height of the New 52, fans were writing in and referring to just reflexively as the real Superman. I heard rumors that a couple of the true believers in the DC editorial staff who really cared about the New 52 were torqued by the fact that fans would continue to write in referring to the real Superman. Fans who had watched the slow evolution of the real Superman were pleased with what they saw. This is a case where post-1980 innovations, a couple of them you would keep. Superman not only revealed his identity to Lois Lane after 50 years of hiding it from her, but they also got married. That felt organic. It felt perfectly real. It felt like perfectly right for the character. All that's suddenly gone with the New 52 Superman. Along with a lot of other stuff, and I mean a lot. Just take a look at this character. First of all, he looks like he's threatening you. And he's wearing a weird costume that has a lot more in common with Ultraman from the Justice Society of Evil than he does with Superman. They changed Superman's costume. You can't do that. You just can't do that. And they did. So he's got, I don't know if you're going to be able to make it out, but he's got weird piping all over his costume because it's armor. Because being who's invulnerable is wearing armor. They got rid of the red shorts on the outside, signature of Superman, and they gave him a popped Nehru collar. They also got rid of the spit curl because all of the New 52 heroes were slightly younger than their standard canonical versions. So Superman doesn't have an old-timey spit curl anymore. Instead, he has a sexy shag of hair. But it isn't just the visuals that were different about the New 52 Superman. He himself was different in a lot of ways. First of all, Lois who? Maybe he knows her. Maybe he doesn't. At the beginning, when these first issues were rolling out, Superman in Action Comics #1 were rolling out, maybe he knows her. Maybe he doesn't. But he does have a steady, and it's Wonder Woman. And although I don't think the comics ever actually came right out and said it, it was so obvious that the reason Wonder Woman and Superman were boyfriend and girlfriend is because they were the two most powerful people. So something straight out of, I don't know, The Boys. Just straight out of an utterly fascistic, nihilistic vision of superheroes. This Superman is an alien. So he doesn't act like he was raised in the Midwest by a kindly couple, the Kents. He doesn't act like that at all. Instead, he floats a little bit above the ground when he's talking to you. He doesn't actually stand on the ground when he's talking to you. And he seems like he was just decanted from some sort of alien vat. What's this odd Earth custom? Or the first words that he says to Batman when he is trashing the whole of the Justice League, what can you do? Not who are you? Not why are you doing this? But just a weird sociopathic 8-year-old. You must have some superpowers. I wonder what they are. I'll beat you up until I see what they are. Like all the other New 52 revamps of all the characters, Green Arrow, Green Lantern, The Flash, the Justice League, Wonder Woman, Batman, like all the others, the New 52 Superman never, at any point, helps anybody. Never. These characters don't help ordinary civilians in the DC world. They fight each other and they self-pity a lot, but they don't save people. It's just that, like the old-fashioned costumes and the old-fashioned altruism, that's just gone out the window. The editorial impetus of this whole revamp was, whatever these beings are, they're largely dark and largely tragic. If you want someone to help you, I don't know, call the Fantastic Four or something like that. It was a soul-draining experience to see these things. I gave up on the entire New 52 lineup almost right away. I stayed with a couple of the titles because of the artwork alone. I tend to read comics for artwork. For instance, Aquaman got a revamp with a great artist. I stayed with that for a little while. But the main reason that I would have stayed with any of the Superman titles if the reason had been artwork, the main reason would have been because Superman started off with artwork by George Perez. But it's terrible artwork by George Perez. You could barely tell that it's Perez. He's either phoning it in or he has no idea what he's supposed to do. And is not getting any kind of editorial direction, which Perez was a really affable, good-natured guy, an incredible talent as a comics artist, but he very much wanted to talk about what he was doing with his writer. And as far as I can tell, he didn't get that in his issue. We were all over the map in terms of what this Superman can or cannot do, and fans didn't like it. They might have been buying it, the sales might have been there, but they didn't like it. Especially the old-time fans, who are the backbone of the comic book industry. They thought, wait a minute, so what are you saying here with this New 52 garbage? Are you saying this is Superman? We're never going to see the real Superman again? Is that what you're saying? And eventually, those protests broke through to the powers that be at DC, and we got a lot of the old heroes back. It was extremely convoluted. There was a girl who's the key to everything, mysterious character who showed up to restore the reality of the pre-New 52 DC continuity, and fiddle with it once again. It would have been easy to fix this wholesale. Just easy to do. But DC hates to do that. They, like Marvel Comics, when they learn what fans want, that hardens them against giving that very thing. We were wide open. We've said in interviews, well, this could go anywhere. Then we heard what you fans want. Now, well, it could still go anywhere, but it's not going to go there. That's the one thing we're not going to do. Like I've said many times, I have no idea when or why or how such a weird attitude took place in comics, but it is now so firmly rooted that, as I've mentioned before, the only way to get rid of it is to get rid of every single person who evinces that attitude. Not just a handful. They've all got to go. You've got to walk them out of the building. Fire them all and walk them out of the building. Put an ad in the trade journals, make a video on YouTube. You will be swamped with extremely talented people to take their places. People who aren't lunatics. People who don't hate comics and comic book fans. But it can't be that you add those people to the psychos that you already have. You've got to get rid of the psychos. So DC doesn't make the changes that they should. And they didn't here either. Because who knows where the New 52 Wonder Woman is. Is the New 52 Wonder Woman out there somewhere? The so-called solution to the New 52 wrap-up was so convoluted and vague that it easily could happen. The one character that I didn't think it could happen with is this character, because this character was more hated than any other New 52 character. And so he was well and truly killed. Not just a body. He was reduced to ashes, and the ashes were reduced to subatomic particles. The point was made over and over again in his final issues that there is no reviving this character. And yet, I think, if I remember correctly, he is revived in current DC continuity. I don't know. I don't read DC Comics. Can't believe that, but I don't. I don't know if he was revived, but he was well and truly killed and replaced by the real Superman, who in that MacGuffin fest of a continuity fix, we were somehow told absorbed some of the qualities of the New 52 reality, but had always been Superman, so the interruption did happen, but also didn't happen. And that Superman is not only married to Lois Lane and in love with her, because of that Superman, keep in mind, the fundamental quality of Superman is his humanity. It's not his alienness. You'd have to fundamentally misunderstand the character to come up with an abomination like this. Who the fundamental quality of the New 52 Superman was his alienness. The fundamental quality of Superman is his humanity. The love of his life is an ordinary human woman. She's not a mutant. She never developed superpowers. She's just an ordinary human woman. Not only was that returned real Superman still married to Lois Lane, but they had a kid. And I looked at that and thought, okay, well, how's that going to work? Aren't you worried about what your enemies would do if you have a burgeoning family? But like everyone else, like every other fan, I was just grinning from ear to ear at how well it worked. How well Superman the dad worked. I was amazed. I've been following this character for decades and decades and decades. I was amazed at how well it worked. It barely broke stride in the comics. It worked. It was such a natural fit. I would argue that that's not true with most of the canonical DC characters, but it worked perfectly with Superman. And we got that. That also was ruined, and it was also ruined by a nihilistic agenda. But we got some wonderful years out of that storyline before that happened. And the added bonus, while we were enjoying all of that with the real Superman returning, is that this a-hole was dead. This a-hole was gone. He'd been reduced to dust. Good. The less seen of the Pop Nehru collars and the what can you do, the better. This was a weird, angry 8-year-old's conception of Superman. He'll get back at everybody. This will be a mean, thuggish character, just like all the other New 52 versions of these characters. They're all mean and thuggish. They care only about themselves. They're always miserable. They don't help innocent people. They all deserve the kind of fiery end this guy got. So you have an epic comic book Wednesday in which I think Michael K. Vaughan and I will completely agree, but for all the wrong reasons. Because we both lived through an utter desecration of our favorite comic book character. I don't know if Michael K. Vaughan was too young to remember the Blue Energy Superman, when Superman became Sparky the Energy Bolt for a while, and there was no end in sight. It was just the character was revamped and the costume was redone. That was bad. It wasn't anywhere near as bad as this. Here's hoping that DC learned its lesson. I know they didn't, but I hope I can always hope that they will. Fundamental changes to canon in the continuity have to be earned. They have to take time. Fans have to like them and say that they like them. You can't just tell fans, oh, you're going to love this. You can't do it just like this. You can't do it like the New 52 did. It would be great if DC, in order to recover some of their vanished sales, would embrace that reality instead of continuing to fight it. But no. But anyway, that's your comic for today. The New 52 Superman. May he rot in hell. But I'll wrap this up for now, but I'll be back. Thank you, BookTube.